Three, two, one, and go.
Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us once again on a Dreams X Trash podcast with Jayson and Oscar. I will be your co host, Oscar, and Jayson, take it away.
Wait, why are you so formal today?
No, I'm trying to keep it clean. We had our first guest. I'm trying to keep it cool, Jayson.
Are you wearing a suit right now, Oscar?
A
Are
suit
you
and
wearing
tie.
Do you have like
Tuxedo,
cologne
man.
on? Today's a wonderful day, guys. We have our first guest. Who is our first guest? Hello.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my nails Nathan. That's my
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you my full name, and so no one can track me down. Just staying away from the police.
And Oscar, can you introduce our wonderful guest?
So Nails Nathan is a man I met at AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and initially I asked him to be my sponsor. And unfortunately, that did not work out because of time constraints on Nathan.
Yeah, I'm loaded.
Yeah. And later on, as we kept talking, and I requested to join to see his Instagram. I noticed that I found out he's an artist, and I was really impressed by his work, especially like Nathan. Please explain what you do with the coffee cups in Starbucks. That really impressed me.
Yeah, it's always the gimmick thing that impresses people. But
Yeah.
no, what happened was I had time before work, and the Starbucks coffee cups, they have just the coffee cup holder has their kind of iconic woman, with the flowing hair, and
I always thought it was a mermaid or something.
Yeah, well, it's just some, it's just some chick from probably like Seattle or something.
Just some chick,
hippie,
okay.
Some hippie girl that like the artist was trying to, have a date with. Yeah, I'm gonna put you on a Starbucks. I don't know, but yeah, and so I had my paint pens with me, and I started. I think the first one I was just started making a face on it and drawing extra stuff into it, and then it got to be like a routine. Every Saturday before work I would do that, and then I kept doing it, but they kind of got out of hand, because then they became more and more thematic, and and it's like this podcast. I was trying to come up with stuff like, oh my god, what am I going to do this week for my coffee cup? But I had this idea to do at least a year's worth, and I'm coming up on it. Like, I went back and I looked, it was July of last year that I started, so I've been counting, like, do I have 52 for every week? And I don't know, we'll see. Yeah,
that's amazing. So you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, and it's just like I'll do one for each week. Now I have to be honest and say that, like, because I started getting thematic and really concentrating on them, I will do one in the middle of the week and make it look better, and then on Saturday I'll take the photo. So I don't actually do it necessarily before work now.
To me, all I'm hearing is an artist who's perfecting, his art.
Yeah,
Trying to get
it gets, like, things that become kind of a gimmick is like, oh, you do the coffee cups, like it used to be bananas, and what I would do is
Bananas.
Wait,
yeah.
So this isn't even your first, like, there's a generation here. Like, you started with bananas.
Well, that's kind of weird, because like when I used to work on movies like a long time ago, and
whoa, can you take us? Take us through this slowly, right? Where does it begin, Nathan?
Okay, well, I went to film school, and then so for the first 2 years after college I was working on films. Now that sounds glamorous to say that, but being on a film crew doesn't mean necessarily you're working on a great movie. You might be working on a very low budget piece of garbage, which I often did.
What was your role in the film crew?
I was a boom operator, and that's not even what I wanted to do.
So you're part of the audio people.
Yeah, and it's not even what I wanted to do. It's not what I trained for. It was the first job I got, and then I was stuck with it. But you have all this time like between shooting to just do nothing. So I would go around to the craft services table where the food and snacks were, and there were always bananas. And we had these Sharpie pens, and I started
Does no one eat
drawing
bananas? What? Okay.
Yeah, I guess people didn't eat the bananas so much, but I would draw, like we all had Sharpie pens, and I would draw faces on the bananas. So fast forward, like people thought that was funny because they'd come, oh look, there's the face on the banana. But like fast forward to I guess 2 or 3 years ago, I started doing it again with the paint pens that I have. And again, it got like more and more elaborate, and like I started like, and Oscar, if you go back on my Instagram, you can see the bananas, like some of the ones I did. But it got to where, like I was doing, and these are very temporary, and this is something that like I is kind of a psychological thing I've been kind of training myself for, with temporary things that are temporary. When I do those things on the bananas, it's it is biodegradable. It's and you're gonna eat it. You got to eat it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a waste. So what am I gonna do? Put it in plastic and keep it? No, I'd do the artwork, take a photo, peel it, and eat it, and throw it away. So, but then it was like my mother was like, I want to do a photo book of all your bananas. And I was like, oh God, now I'm getting stuck on being known as the banana guy.
So your mom picked up on this, and she thought it was something worth recording.
Oh yeah, and she did. She made a little booklet of it, and it's cute. And it was, but it was like, I thought, okay, I've done enough bananas. But the Starbucks thing has lasted longer. Yeah, but it's not it's not like the primary thing I work on. It's fun, and that's part of the point. Is it really has to be, I think.
So Nathan, like in your past, what made you believe or want to be an artist?
Well, and this is something I rediscovered. See, I when I was a kid, I did a lot of drawing, and I loved drawing, and I loved doing artwork, and when I was in junior high, like I was miserable at this private school, and like so my mother looked around, and she found that there was a place that had there was a magnet school. It was like a school where you had a single focus.
Okay.
And
wait, a magnet school?
Yeah, that's what they called it. It was like in Texas they had what they called the magnet system, which was there would be a special school that had a focus, like maybe business or another one was the super brilliant, which I wasn't. But one of them was the arts, and so there was the arts magnet, and I auditioned for that school, and I got in because you had to do some still life and draw some stuff, and it was government-wise, it was a way to bring people from all over the city, from like a lot of racial backgrounds together, and that was kind of its charter idea. Was that it brought people from all around the community together for one purpose. So I did 3 hours of art every day in high school, and I loved it, and I really, I got into it. The thing is, when you're in high school, you're free to be like, to think that your dreams are all going to come true, and the rest of your life is going to have, it's all going to be art, And when I went to college, I went to New York, so I went to NYU, and first of all, NYU's art department wasn't that great. Their film department is great. Their art department isn't.
Aren't they famously known for their film department?
For film, yeah.
Yeah,
but
Tisch.
not...
Right?
Yeah, so I went to Tisch for film, but that was after I got sick of the art department because it was just not well funded. The teachers I thought were not as good as my ones in high school, and even some of the equipment wasn't even as good. So, see, art in New York for the schools is like, they have big institutes that are good, but not NYU. It was too general. So, but the worst part was that what you realize when you get out there is that you look at the gallery culture and you just see that it's full of pretentious garbage, and it's about, you gotta suck up to these people that, are not very interesting and not and they don't seem to know art very well.
So
And
what are the expectations?
well, the expectations are that you are going to kiss somebody's ass, like who's in the gallery world, and that you're going to say all the right things and get to know the right people, and then maybe someone might give you a gallery show. And it's a lot of it is about who you know and what it was just really pretentious and insincere. So that's incredibly discouraging.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So, basically, what you're trying to say is that, or from what I'm understanding, is that the gallery world is basically its own ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's like a business, and it's like anything. Money gets involved, and certain amount of like social politics gets involved, and it's just like any kind of crushing industry that is.
So it's not necessarily based on merit, and that's your problem, right?
Right. It's not necessarily based on merit, and it's also not necessarily based on talent. I mean, it's that. I mean, I was looking at some of this stuff in the galleries and going, man, these are charlatans. They're not. This is not real artwork. This is just like, oh well, I took a toilet bowl and I painted the inside with red because it's like blood, and then I took it and vomited in it, and and I put a goldfish in it, and that's my art.
So, is it so extreme? Like, it's almost like when you were in the gallery world, you had like a Twilight Zone type of moment, where it's like you think, "What is going on? Have I entered like this parallel universe?"
Well, I would just stand there, and I would I thought, I don't even like this stuff. I don't want to go look at this garbage, and it's. Why would I I don't.
This reminds me of one article I read online whereby someone walked into an art gallery. I don't know where. Maybe it was New York or somewhere in Europe, and they dropped their glasses on the ground, and everyone else thought that the glasses on the ground was an art piece. So they started taking photos of the glasses on the ground. So it's like you say that, but the people who are putting in the art into the gallery are part of an ecosystem, but also the people who walk into the art galleries are convinced that whatever they see is something sublime, something truly artsy. It's like it's beautiful. Everything is beautiful.
Oh, so you're gonna have to send me that article. That sounds like an Onion article, though.
But I mean, it would not be inaccurate. And have either of you ever been in a museum or a gallery and you found that one of the pieces seemed to be possibly a bench that or something, that you could sit on, like a chair or a bench, and it's like there's this moment where you go, okay, I'm really tired and I want to sit down because I've been standing and looking at this crap for a long time. But I think this is a piece of artwork, actually, and I'm not sure. The security's going to come get me if I sit on this, I think. I mean, I've had that twice at least. I can think of going, I don't know. I think I'm not allowed to sit on this, So where something functional is now something that you could get arrested for because you're just tired. And it doesn't have a barrier around it to say don't sit down or something. It's
But
so,
to be fair, that's part of one of the interesting things you can do with art, right? You can take the normal things in everyday life or the mundane, and you can add new perspective to it, right? So
and I don't want to discount the that quality and that importance is that you can help people see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a difference between that and actually people get it, and then just being lazy and taking something and throwing it together and saying, okay, well, this is art.
I agree with that. So on the last episode, it's not yet released, Jayson and I were talking about the idea that real art comes from extreme sacrifice. Whether the sacrifice is your time, or sacrifice is blood, sweat, and tears. And we're comparing the difference between figure skating as an art form and girls twerking on Instagram as an art form.
Before we tell Nathan our opinions, I would like to hear what Nathan thinks. First.
Well, in terms of blood, sweat, and tears, I think that there's a type of, I guess, dare I say, genius, who just has that gift that, like, with utter ease can make something. I mean, and it's you just don't question. You're like, oh, this is good, and then you want to kill the person because you're like, I wish I had that talent, But then there's the thing where someone really agonizes over it, and any artist will look at something that they've created and only see the flaws and try to do it. That's why, I mean, Picasso would do the same theme painting over and over and over and over and over again. And all of them, to the layman, looks good. But to him, something wasn't right. And that's why Picasso was Picasso. I mean, he was not going to quit until he got it right. He was also the kind of genius, though, that could sneeze and you go, oh, wow, that really, that is hard. But then there's the lazy type who is a scam artist, in my opinion. And the thing is, it's like, if I even suspect, if it feels like it's a kind of scam, I just don't like it anyway. It's like those paintings of a big red square or something that's like, I just have trouble believing the blood, sweat, and tears aspect of it, and I think that's really kind of, but there also has to be, there's blood, sweat, and tears, but then there also has to be joy, I think. And that's really what later in life I rediscovered after the gallery period. But
okay.
But I want to hear you guys' opinion on.
So you basically, okay. So Oscar said something similar to what you're saying, that low effort work. We just coined it low effort work. It's hard to accept that on the same level, or call that art on the same sort of plane as like Picasso and all these other great artists that sacrifice so much for their artwork,
Exactly.
Is that true, Nathan? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I agree with it. See, because I think in life generally, when people, now a lot of people, most people will understand insincerity, and they will be able to tell when this is come on, this is a scam. But there are a lot of people, half of America voted for an idiot. So, and I don't
oh that's a hot take. Oh no.
So I mean, what it tells you is there's a lot of stupid people out there too. So, and just because like where they're from or what they're, there are a lot of stupid people who go to galleries and who are just like, oh, I think it's great, it's amazing, or I just love the way the color is it's just one color, and it's just, the shape is just square. It's like, oh God, you're just trying to sound clever, but actually, someone else might go, this really feels like I'm being taken for, my $5 to get into this gallery. And that, I think, is people know, I think, if they've got a gut instinct that this is just not saying anything, and it's just like trying to
it's trying to gain people's attention without actually saying something, right?
And that's the problem, and I think most people will sense that. But on the other hand, it's like, well,
it's funny because it brings us to like today, right? Today we're living in like the Instagram generation, right? Like we're in the
Oh yeah.
Well, in the time of like instant gratification, you have junk food that is like easier to get. Like you have apps that like one tap away you can get junk food. There's porn, there's movies, there's all these kinds of, there's Instagram, there's TikTok. So you all have these like things that are shortening your time. Not your time, but your attention span, right?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
no, like,
yes.
this goes really well into the idea of how SoundCloud changed the amount of time like a record had to be, how long a song had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like on I think Hassan Minhaj did a thing on that.
Yeah.
People's attention span being really short, and this is true because, and I'll say I'm guilty of it when I'm checking Instagram, which I do daily.
Same here.
You know,
we're all. It's hard to be in this world right now and not get your attention span like.
Well, yeah, and think about it. Our perception of the world now is tiny because it's on this little phone, and this is part of what is just one of the reasons why I love traveling and then going and looking at street art now is because I'm not looking at this tiny screen. I'm looking at a huge building with a painting on it, and I'm looking at it for free. And this is part of the revolution that I think has happened. And what really got me back into art, because I didn't, like I said, I got so discouraged with art, and then I started doing film, and then it was just life. It was just like, okay, now I got to do this. Now I got to make money. Now I got to get married and divorced, and now I got and it was just, I got caught up in that. And only a few years ago I had been traveling and seeing all this street art on buildings everywhere, and I thought, these people this is good art, and it's just they're not rules. These are people are breaking the law sometimes. I mean, sometimes they get commissioned and it becomes an industry in itself, but still, I was like, this is free. I don't even have to pay for this. And I can look at all this stuff and I can catch, the renegade street artists who wheat paste their art to the wall, or they spray paint it to the wall. Or I thought, I could do that. I want to do that. And I used to be an artist back in my days when I was a wee nipper. And I just started, hey, I'm going to try this. So I started doing it again and picking up and experimenting, and I rediscovered the joy of being an artist and of creating. And I thought, this is what I lost. And this is what I lost, is the not giving a shit about what a bunch of pretentious people think, and not caring about the approval of people. I basically accepted the fact that what I do, I will not be famous. I will not end up making a lot of money. My art will, if I do street art, it's going to be temporary because it'll get painted over. If it's illegal, it's going to get painted over, and who knows how many people actually take a photo of it.
So Nathan, can I stop you for 1 second? So sure. I just want to just go over this one more time. So it's sort of like when you first discovered the gallery world, it's almost like you lost hope and passion in the art world, right? And after that, it seemed like you became kind of cynical. Do I have that right? And then you later on came back and rediscovered your passion, and it was on those fringes of the art world, right? People doing this, people just doing the street art. And I find it very interesting because street art, like what you said, it's almost like you have to accept the Buddhist creed of no attachment. Because like you said, this piece of art, it's going to get painted over. That's really insane to me. You know how the Buddhists, I can't remember which specific creed or which specific group are doing it, but they create those huge mandalas. And then after they're done, they have to wipe everything away.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
and this is about being temporary. I mean, life is temporary. Everything is temporary, and that is you hit the nail, on the head.
The nail. The nail of nails.
The Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, it says the same thing, whereby the effort is yours, but the results are do not belong to you.
Yeah. And I mean, let's take the biggest irony of this, which is that, okay, most people know street art nowadays through Banksy. And Banksy had a very simple genius, which is that he knew it was temporary, and he decided, I'm gonna mess with the world. I'm gonna start make it funny and say some really incredible political things, and I know it'll get painted over, and I know that, like, this is this is something that only a few people will see, but I'm gonna make breaking the rules part of the subject. And then what happened was, he really was such a genius in a simplistic way that, well, he rightfully and deservedly so became famous. And now he's kind of stuck in his own irony, which is that now he's part of everything he still tries to make fun of. And he destroys his own painting, he tries to shred it in Sotheby's, and then, oh my god, now it's that much more worth that much more money. And I feel almost bad for the guy, almost, because hell with him, he's got millions and millions of dollars. But like but at the same time, where every street artist is indebted, has to be kind of indebted to him, because now
he's like the Godfather. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's possible he's not the only one. He wasn't the first one to do that type of art, but he definitely added a sense of humor to it and a political statement, and threw irony into it. Now, so that's what everyone kind of seeks to do in a certain way nowadays.
So,
the problem is that now there's copies, and it has become almost a kind of an industry in itself, in the same way that the gallery world is. And there's lots of difficulties with trying to get a legitimate wall, or whether whether you're famous or whether you're not, and there's a lot of cliche artwork. I mean, you talk about like,
so a lot of the crony elements that were in the gallery world have sort of invaded your street art world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's like a good documentary about Banksy, like stealing Banksy, which is this jerk, like, I don't think he's a German guy, like, who will basically pay a building owner to cut out his wall. He pays a fair amount, but then he can sell the Banksy that's on it for millions and millions of pounds. Jesus. And yeah, and this happens regularly, that his Banksy stuff is stolen. So now there's this backlash to try to protect and make sure that doesn't happen. But it's just, now it's in the hands of the money makers.
When did Banksy become famous? When did his artwork start gaining fame?
Well, it's when, I mean, he had I think the thing that really started to take off was like there was enough of his stuff that a book came out, and but he worked hard. I mean, blood, sweat, and tears. I got to give the guy credit. I mean, he did lots and lots of stuff. I mean, he was working all the time, and he was doing a lot of stuff. Like, he was prolific. So when he actually started to, I think, not exit through the gift shop. There's a pretty good Banksy documentary out that.
Actually, I watched that one, Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Yeah, and now that shows, in that documentary, you see how pretension just is can invade the street art world very quickly.
Yeah.
I saw that Mr. Brainwash. I saw that guy's art exhibit in Japan, in Osaka, and I was just like, oh, this is gross.
I was gonna ask you that. So it's like, isn't it hard right now in the world of like instant gratification, where you're competing? Art is basically competing for attention up there with like TikTok, at least amongst the masses, right? It's competing amongst attention with like TikTok and YouTube and these streamers and like whatever's going on in the news and Trump and stuff like that. And our attention is very limited, right? So it's like, how do you fight off the temptation to not play that pretentious game? Because that pretentious game, for all we can say about it, does create art that goes viral, right? That's why that's why like
low effort, high impact art.
Yeah, exactly. Basically that's it, right? And we can sit here and argue about whether it's like what kind of value is it bringing to society and what is it trying to say and stuff like that. But it does have a huge impact if people are talking about it, you know.
Well,
so like,
I think
what are the temptations? Like, how do you fight off that temptation to go for that low effort work?
It's tough. I mean, because you want I'm not very well recognized. You know, it's like and part of it is being in Japan. Street art in Japan is terrible. It's just I don't want to say that the artwork that's out there is terrible. What I want to say is that the attention to it, and Japan is always like several years behind in terms of, they love Banksy. They'll go and the Banksy exhibit, but they might never care or even go and think it's amazing that down at the end of the street, oh my God, did they look at the wall? No, there's something that, like, I've done things around and they've gotten painted over. A lot of them have gotten painted over, and like some of them were pretty good, and they were up very, very briefly. But this is a country full of old men, it's not, and the young people, they're kind of their faces in their phone, and they're just everything's behind in terms. So I will admit, when someone does take a photo of my artwork and tags me, or it pops up on Instagram, like I did something in Hamburg in Germany, and every now and then that one will pop up more often, because in Germany they love street art. So I get happy about that, because it's like, oh wow, but it's not like a kind of like, ew, I'm famous. It's really just kind of like an appreciation that somebody out there liked it, and I'm fine with it. It's very small, and I'm okay with it. I have no idea if I became famous, how would I feel? I don't know. It's probably not going to happen, and I'm fine with it. And that it has to come from the sincerity. Instagram is fine as long as your joy in doing the artwork, I think, is always the same, and also that you're grateful to the people who are paying attention to you and who are getting it.
Your fans.
I think it has to come from within your heart and your passion.
So Nathan, you talk about the joy in creating art. So last year, when I was a heavy drinker, I would write poetry, and there was no joy in writing that poetry, but reading that poetry, even when I was sober, even today when I read the poetry I wrote back then when I was drinking, that poetry seems to have more of an impact on me to this day, as opposed to the poetry that I write right now when I'm sober. I feel like the poetry I'm writing now is missing something. What do you think about that?
Oh, we're going back to the whole conversation of drugs and artwork.
Yeah, this is look, it's a fallacy that drugs and alcohol makes you better at it. I think. I think that people like to believe that drugs and alcohol helps their artwork, but in all honesty, I don't go along with that, because see, I didn't start doing the artwork until I got sober. I mean, a few years after I got sober. I rediscovered artwork through a lot of very core passion and just something that had been totally snuffed out as an alcoholic.
But when you have so many examples of artists that have clearly different art, so there's like before when they're on drugs and after when they're sober, there's a huge shift. You have like a lot of like musicians, rock stars.
Their consciousness changed, but like it doesn't mean they become less talented.
That's for sure. I
think they're channeling a different part of themselves, but I don't think that people become less talented. And I mean, I've met a famous person in one of the AA meetings. And
Oh, okay. Are you gonna
so
tell us who this famous person is? Are you
absolutely
gonna
not.
tease us?
Absolutely not.
You're
No,
gonna tease
no,
us? Oh God.
no, because it's Alcoholics Anonymous. And
Right.
so,
Right.
but this guy did not become less talented, you know,
Is this
because
like
he
a
got
B-lister, A-lister?
no, major, very A-list.
Oh wow, like a actor, musician.
As a
Secret
musician.
Jayson, Anonymous.
But
He could like it's still anonymous. Come on, like he's an actor, musician.
He's a musician. He was
Okay,
musician.
okay.
And so the thing is, I think that you have to now. What I will say is that occasionally, alcohol and drugs will knock down a barrier that maybe someone feels in their conscious mind is kind of saying, oh, I can't express myself. But the thing is, when you're alone and you're creating and you're still afraid of yourself, then something's that's not cool. I mean, and I'll tell you, like, I would not, if someone said, you will be more talented and you will actually end up famous if you go back to drinking, I'd say, screw you, I'll stick with what I am, like, in my art now. But because I'd lose the passion. I think I'd spend all my time, with drugs and alcohol.
It's really funny that you bring that up, because we're literally creating a generation of children who will become adults later who can't express themselves or their opinions, right? Because they're just constantly looking at their screen. They're used to being told what to do and what to like, whether it's through Instagram, through TikTok, through YouTube. They're like, just like this, like that, like this. And even when they do express themselves, it's like a Xerox of a Xerox. They're just copying somebody else's opinion that they've seen somewhere else. So it's like a plug-in philosophy or plug-in opinion they found.
And that's really, and in street art, there's a lot of cliches. Like, I tell you, I'm so sick of the cliches in street art, and I've been guilty. I'm a hypocrite. I've been guilty of a few of them at the beginning. I am really tired of hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds, like people,
like just
so sick of seeing street art with hummingbirds, and I don't know why, but hummingbirds, hearts, halos. They all start with H. And then
light bulbs. Okay.
Halos. Okay.
Ironic children. I'm so sick of cute, innocent children or ironic children with weapons. Sick of that. And I've done it, so I'm a hypocrite. Now, mind you, there was a reason why I did it. It was a very focused reason why I had a child in my thing. But then there's like, what else? I mean, there's like just different. There's these things that people, Banksy copies, balloons, doing the balloon girl, except a different version. And it's just, there's so much of that. And it's like, okay, but you're not actually being original. But one thing I think we have to kind of remember is really the question, why do people do art at all? What is it that is the genesis of art? And this is something that actually I made a note of that I wanted to bring up. Which
so can we ask you, why do you do your art? I think that's a perfect place to start.
Yeah, the reason I do my art is because there's something inside my imagination, and there's something inside all my thoughts and the big mixed bowl of whatever my experiences are that wants to come out. And how does it come out? Well, I can blab and talk, or I can take a talent that was given to me through genetics, through God, through whatever. And I'm an agnostic, I should say, but I'm really willing to accept that something other than science gave me some kind of talent, and it comes out the way that who knew that I would have that, and it's human. And this is really very interesting, is that it's a question: is art strictly a human thing? Is that one of the things that defines humanity? In a way, possibly. But thinking back, okay, like a few years ago, before I it was one of the things that inspired me. I think was I went around Spain, and I went to Cantabria, where some of the oldest cave paintings are. And so there's the famous one, which is Altamira, which you can't even see the real walls now. It's you can only see a replica. But so I went to one actually that was older than that one, and it was nearby. It was the Cuevas de Castillo, I think is the and actually, and here's the thing: it was the first stencil where they took pigment and they used a hollow bone, and they took the pigment and they blew through the bone to create a kind of spray paint, and they had and
Wait,
it was like
sorry,
hands.
what did they use? What did they use? That's saying.
Well, they used like a hollow bone. They said like an animal bone, hollowed out animal bone, and the pigment, and they would blow the pigment through that, and they put their hand on the wall, and they'd spray around it, so you have these handprints. And then there are some paintings of animals and things, and
right.
I'm into some animals, but I'm fascinated because it was the first stencil in the world, and I mean that's what I do a lot of. So
you're looking at that and you're like, this is the OG. This is where it all started.
Yeah,
this is where it all started.
Right? Yeah. Banksy ain't got shit, but like
the motherfucker that did this. He started it all.
They were women's hands. The study said they were women's hands. So this is like, men
will never accept that one.
Well, a bunch of dudes who are scientists said so. But the thing that's beautiful about that is we have to ask about all these cave paintings. Why were they doing it? Was it just because? Was it spiritual? Was there a kind of ritual element? Was it because like, hey, this is what I saw today? Or but the hands. What was the thing? It's like, hey, I'm gonna put my hand here for all time. Was it a form of graffiti? Like, this is me. This is my hand for all time.
So we talked about this in the last episode, and I think you're gonna really like the last episode actually, because my theory is that a big part of why they did that must have been boredom.
Could be. Why not?
If life is good, right? Life is good. Your family or your clan has caught a bunch of meat. You've been sleeping the whole day, and now suddenly you have all this extra time. You're just gonna start experimenting with shit like children do, right? When you have all this free time and you're small. I'm talking about like way back. Remove all the screens, remove all of the video games and stuff like that. You'd go out into the open or outside, and you just, hey, what happens if I jump on this tree? Hey, what happens if I climb this shit? You like as a kid, there's that like wondrous adventure spirit within you. It seems exactly. It just seems innate in you. I'm not really sure where it comes from.
I really agree with you, and I think that part of it is the exploration of the joy within the spirit is what produces art, and this also extends to the question: is it what defines humans? Well, here's another example, which is most people know Coco, the gorilla that could do sign language. And,
there's a gorilla that can do sign language?
Well, she passed. Like it's a famous kind of story of this woman. She had these gorillas living in her home. These, and one of them was called
Jamie.
Coco.
Pull it up. Jamie, pull it up.
I'm looking at it right now.
He actually. Okay.
But she taught them sign language.
Right.
And they could sign, and actually, they were expressing things, telling stories, and there was another one. They tried to have a mate, and this other gorilla, Michael, they didn't actually mesh. Which shows, gorillas have preferences. Like, hey, you ain't my type. But what she did,
wow.
In addition to doing learning sign language and expressing stories of their past, of their memories, they would do paintings. Especially Michael, the male, would do paintings that were not trained paintings. They were they might be, they're very abstract because it's just like they couldn't necessarily do a representational painting, but there would be colors that made sense about what was being painted, whether cat or whether it was flowers or whether it was something from their feelings and emotions. So now we can say that gorillas are very close to humans. So it's not necessarily strictly human, but something about joy and wanting to get exploration of what's inside out is there. And then we could take the example of the Volgakop bowerbird, the Gardner bowerbird, which is a bird that creates things to attract a mate, and it will take a bunch of colored leaves and put them together in kind of display, or twigs or something, and create a kind of assemblage for a mate.
Wait, do we know why they do this?
Well, they do it to attract a mate, but their choices are very individual, and they're not always the same type of thing. And it's like, this is a bird, like, and it's like, well, is that art? I kind of think so. I like to believe so, because there's something that's like, hey, look at, I'm choosing the red leaves and the yellow leaves, and check it out, I added a leaf here. It's like,
there seems to be some sort of choice that's made when the bird does that.
In this sense, I can assume that art is a primordial part of us. It's almost biological. It's not just in human beings, it's also out in nature, but out in nature it's expressed through the desire to find a mate.
Sure, there's a purpose.
That's the motivation. Yeah, I feel like okay.
And we could say, okay, there's a purpose, and it's not necessarily about expressing. But is it? Maybe we're arrogant, and
it's funny because it's like, has it changed so much even today? When you wear a fly ass suit to a club, what are you trying to do when you do something like that?
Yeah. And even Altamira, like, there were all these skeptics about the Altamira, the cave paintings in Spain. They were saying things like why they looked a certain way, and the arrogance of the skeptics was like, well, they were, incapable of abstract thought. I mean,
wait, how did they know that though?
Exactly, because it's arrogant. And so we, in arrogance, might say, well, the bowerbird, is incapable of abstract thought. So, and I just don't buy it. I can't buy my own arrogance. I like to think, well, maybe this bird has some abstract thought, But the reasons people do art, I mean, sometimes it might be spiritual, like religious. It might be, but there's a communication. And even like, okay, and like taggers, right? Okay, graffiti taggers. That I don't do that, by the way. I mean, I don't write my name over and over again, because I don't think my name is interesting. I think my image is interesting personally. But some people, it's like they want to write their name over and over and over and over again, and they do creative ways to show it sometimes that have very high design qualities, and I give them credit for that, definitely. But this compulsion to it's just your name. You're not writing a statement like, for Myanmar or anything. It's like, it's just, hey, like, Chicken One or whatever, someone's tag name. And that is, in a very simple sense, existentialist. I exist. Here's me. I don't want to be forgotten. It's a cry to the universe. Please pay attention to me.
And as Becca, the denial of death, right, Oscar? One of the ways we try to escape death is art, right?
Yes.
We're trying to immortalize ourselves through art.
Yeah, and that might be, part of it is that I think that any pure artist is not necessarily thinking, I'm going to be immortal through my paintings, and this is my my God complex. If you consider, Van Gogh sold only one painting in his entire life.
He was just a normal guy until he died.
He was pretty poor. I mean, he
wasn't he locked up in the asylum too? Like he looked like a kind of like
he had some problem. Like,
he pretty lived a horrible life.
I mean, he was a tortured soul. I mean,
his father, I think, was also abusive or something. One of his family members was extremely abusive too.
But he had, he had this compulsion, which was just part of his existence, was I have to create. And it wasn't like he had no thought like I'm gonna be around forever. It was just he had a compulsion to create. And there's a thing called outsider art, which is like people who don't do art for the purpose of commercial. I mean, it's very pure, and you get this category of outsider art of like mentally distressed people, or who may have social difficulties or whatever, and their art, unfortunately, it's hard to say, well, are they being exploited? Possibly. Can sell for a lot of money, but their reason for doing it is very pure. It's just, they have something inside that needs to come out, and it's human. And there's a good documentary actually that I saw about the outsider art too. It's just fascinating stuff. I mean, and so you have all these different reasons for people doing stuff. It's in its own way existentialist, even when it's a tagger trying to say, hey, here's my name 20 million times, please. But I really go back to the core idea that it's temporary. So everything I do, and anything that any of us do, we can all get wiped off the map. Like we're a blip in the history of the universe. We're a millisecond, all of us, even Picasso. Something I will eventually, the planet will dissolve eventually. But for someone like me, it's probably, I'm gonna be forgotten much sooner than Picasso. So, but I have to accept that, and I can't. It can't depress me into not doing art, because why did I pick up the paint in the first place?
There's so many amazing sorry, there's so many amazing things you just said, but I really want to touch on that element of when you are alive, or when you experience, or being in general, right? There's suffering, right? And through that suffering, you become a tortured soul. And one of the most interesting, I'd like to say interesting things in history when it comes to like art that I find like very peculiar is that like in World War One, right? World War One is actually usually called, it's coined as being the Writers' War. And I don't know if you know anything about this, but it's called that specifically because World War One is where like there was this advent of trench warfare, right? There was a war being fought on a large amount, like a huge scale that no one had ever seen before, right? And there was this particular like environment. I don't know if people, like even the listeners, have an idea of what trench warfare is that basically people dug into the ground and were like basically like almost throwing bombs and shooting at each other. So these trenches were like these huge lines of like literal lines in the ground that have been drawn and like dug up, and people are like trying. So the idea was that every day,
basically timed suicide.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, that's wonderful. So every day they would try to push their own trench forward, and in that way they're winning the war, right?
And they got nowhere.
Exactly. What people found out, like, once there was all kinds of strategies employed and to like sort of one up each other, Germany was doing this, and then France was doing this, Britain tried doing this and stuff like that, right? And what people eventually realized is that going out into the dead man's zone. The dead man's zone is basically like the no man's land, actually.
Right.
Yeah. That is the middle between like one trench and like one side's trench and the other side's trench was basically suicide. Yeah. It was so bad that people couldn't even get out to move the bodies of their fallen comrades. Because if you get out, you might be shot instantly by a sniper from the other side of the trench. And people had to sleep next,
in the trenches.
Next to the dead. To corpses, next to corpses. And it wouldn't even be like that. Would attract rats. It would attract diseases.
Well, the flu. Interesting side note is that like the flu, in 1918, the pandemic, at that time killed, I think, more people than the bullets actually.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that's another thing. Like people don't even talk about.
Pure angst. It was just like and it's where industry had basically overtaken the old concept of warfare, of like walking straight at your enemy and firing.
That was the first war where like warfare was industrialized.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, now this is kind of pointless the way we're doing it, you know.
So going back to the trench warfare real quick. So the trench warfare created. So when people found out like, oh, you know, it's suicide, blah blah blah, and like there was a sort of stalemate. There was a lot of downtime, and you can imagine being in an environment like that. What kind of suffering? What kind of like thoughts that are going through your head? And there's a lot of poetry. There's a lot of stories, like short stories.
Letters back home to their wives, to their mothers.
Exactly, that have been made from that period. It's actually one of the most well documented from the perspective of a soldier. It's more well documented than World War II, actually. When it comes to like,
they had all the time to like be creative, you know. It wasn't just home, you know. Letters weren't just like, "Hey, babe, it sucks here." It's like, it started to get more so, you know. They aimed to explore their, you know, their emotions and everything, because they knew like they could step up and, you know, when they blow that whistle, everything could be finished.
It's game over.
All of their, you know, all their existentialism was getting put into what they were writing, because it was like that might be the last thing they do.
And
so
like
in this sense, we're talking about art being awareness of your own mortality. Art being fully aware of the fact that this could be your very last moment.
Yes. And like even what Nathan brought up, how do you people got creative, because how do you describe the grief of seeing your best friend being shot in the head and then you have to sleep next to his dead body for like days on end? How do you describe that? You can't just write a letter back home to like your wife saying, "Old Mike is right next to me, he's not breathing." You know, it's like you gotta have to like, how do you write that grief? How do you
or
describe
even like
that?
Eventually someday, how does one paint it? And then you see the you know, that kind of art, the like terror, you know, like the terror in art can sometimes come out, you know. And that's why, you know, stuff like Monet doesn't do anything for me. Van Gogh does stuff for me, but Monet, it's like, I mean, I love Monet's colors, but I also just think the people that are really into Monet, I don't know, it's just like, oh, it's nice, it's so pretty, you know. And I just think there's no, I don't know, I like a bit of irony and kind of craziness, and this is my prep. Which actually I want to know. So for example, Jayson and Oscar, who are the artists that really do it for you, like the visual artists? Like who are your favorites? Yeah, I mean, like famous artists. What kind of stuff do you prefer? Like painters or what, you know?
I'm definitely into the bizarre and abstract.
So like surrealism, perhaps?
Yes. Actually,
I love surrealism. I mean, it's just it's what drove me, definitely.
My current partner, the person that I'm dating, the reason why I swiped right on them on Tinder in the first place is because she had a bunch of surreal art in her profile, and it was so different from, I don't know if you've ever been on Tinder in Japan, you know, pictures of food, pictures of cats, stuff like that. People don't want to put pictures of themselves, they're too shy, right?
Oh, yeah. God,
and that's a whole other thing, I don't want to get into it. She was like really putting herself out there, you know, and I was just like, I don't need to go on a date with this person, but I have to have a conversation with this person.
So it's like the bowerbird, you know. He's like, "Hey, check out my leaves."
She was my bowerbird, basically.
Yeah. So, well, that's cool. I mean, you know, and I love surrealism too. I one of the things I try to do is take things that don't belong together and put them together. Like I took one of the paintings I did was this like guy. He's carrying a pack, and it's a really heavy pack. It's this old Japanese man, and he's carrying this pack. It's from a photograph that, you know, long forgotten. And I thought, he looks like he's carrying such a burden, so what can I do with that? And I put a shark on his back. It was I like to have fun with the images, so I put this shark that he's carrying, which is just strapped to his back for no reason. It was just absurd, but it's one of my favorites. So, but like Oscar, what kind of stuff does it for you? What do you like?
For me, like with visual art, I'm not really keen on visual art. Like I've never really been good at drawings. I've not been given so much attention to visual art. I've enjoyed more writing than visual art.
Okay, so Nails Nathan is what you really like.
Damn, Nathan. Nathan just plugging himself like that. Jesus. Shameless.
No, I'm honored that you like the Starbucks cups. That's good. So,
well, no, you're right. Like the person who doesn't like visual art likes your visual art. That says something.
It's not that I don't like visual art. I've just never given it much thought.
Sounds like you don't like it, but it's okay.
No. I mean that's fair enough. I think people respond to what really what speaks to them, and for some people it's writing, and for some people it's music more than anything. So I think that if there are some people that just don't want to be dragged to a gallery, and then there are some people who don't want to be dragged to a concert, and then some people are like, I don't really read. And it's fine because they respond to something else. But what they're responding to, whatever art form it is I think a genuine passion and a genuine joy that the artist who created it had, something that communicates. And why do we like surrealism? Things that are just because we live a lot of our life in our dreams, and that's what surrealism is.
I just thought I was a fucked up person, but it's nice to know. Nathan, thanks for explaining. I'm not a fucked up person. I like my dreams. That's what's happening.
Well, I mean, dreams like kind of hit honestly where we don't want to, like, things that we don't want to admit, and so a surrealist will just put things there that sometimes are just absurd and fun. But other times it's like, whoa, oh, okay. That's really kind of scary that you think about that.
And actually, it's nice that you bring that up, because I always felt like that. My liking of surreal elements, or like what you said, putting two things that shouldn't go together, and sometimes you can get an eerie feeling or the uncanny valley from it.
Oh, it's subconscious, it's like
it also leads into my love of horror too. Because I am a huge
Me too. I love horror movies.
I love horror films. I was traumatized as a kid. I used to hate horror a lot, but as I grow up, I'm just like, horror is like one of those genres where I feel like when it's done well, it says so much. It says so much, and like you said, what you were saying, it's almost like a dream where it reveals the things that you don't want to see. It forces you to look at things that you don't want to see. It forces you to hear things that you don't want to hear.
Well, yeah. I'm not a big fan of horror movies because they're scary. But I mean,
okay, fair enough.
But exploring one's fear is something that is. I mean, we all have like some very serious,
insecurities, fears,
and insecurities, and so it's definitely. I think there's an artist that you might actually like, Jayson. That his name. Oh God, what is his name? It's a Polish. I think he's a Polish artist, but it's like a very kind of horror. It's okay. Oh, I found it. Okay, how do I pronounce this? Bekninski. Yeah, Beksinski. And it's the kind of thing that's very dark and surreal and scary as hell.
Oh yeah, this is my stuff right here.
Yeah, and the guy it's kind of sad. I think he was murdered. He was actually murdered by a family member's friend or something. I think they were trying to get money from him, but his stuff is incredible. Yeah,
and I mean,
okay. And then you got like stuff like Giger, H.R. Giger, who did the the designs for the Alien movies, and that stuff taps into something
which I consider one of the best.
Deep.
I consider one of the best like horror franchises of all time. No, not even horror franchise, movie franchise of all time, but
And why? And because I would say because of Giger's monsters, and
The
it
xenomorph,
really,
right? The xenomorph design
yeah.
is just insane. Like what?
Giger had those designs and those paintings and things like that, and they are utterly terrifying, and they come from the deep
Yeah,
fear
yeah.
of the
Have you seen?
subconscious.
So the concept art for the xenomorphs, there was actually a lot more like scarier shit, like stuff.
Oh, yeah.
that-
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah. I don't know how. I think I probably watched a YouTube video on this, but there's a lot of concept art that goes into like the design of the monsters, and for the xenomorph, there was a lot of terrifying stuff. Like
Yeah, and I mean, like he did all these designs. I remember like I saw this, like I listened to the commentary for Alien, and it was like it's funny. We're getting off on movies now, but like it's like, but there's one of the guys, the writers or something, was like saying how he looked at Giger's design and said, "Well, yeah, as long as it could have those fingers. I really wanted the fingers on the alien when it pops out of the egg. It just needed the fingers." It's really, I was like going over and over in my head, fingers.
And there's something about Giga's art that was like the details. It was just the details that always got me.
Yeah.
Like he went all out with the details to add scales. Like you'd see every little. It looked like digital art, basically.
Yeah, and well, I guess he used airbrush a lot. He really took airbrush to a different level, and yeah, I mean, it's incredibly organic, and it really
it's almost
makes it terrifying.
It's like it's organic, but like the shapes and the way everything connects is almost industrial. It's a very weird. Like,
yeah. He combines this kind of
industrial.
Yeah, it's like this mechanized kind of organic.
Yeah, like you just have to look at it to just see. Like I'm pretty sure, like the listeners, when they look at, if they want to look,
Actually, I've got a Starbucks cup that's coming up that you might like, Jayson.
Oh yeah,
it's finished.
Just send, I'll add you on like line. Send those pictures my way, man. I love shit like that. And it is the final minutes of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's that time again, unfortunately.
Well, I really thank you very much for having me as a guest. It was like I've been looking forward to it.
It's been great. Our very first guest.
That's right. I'm the first. Oh,
yeah.
And thank you for making me the first. I'm very honored.
Oscar prepared for you a cake. Number one cake.
Yeah.
Talk to him. Talk to him how you can get it, but
Anyways, I see you on Saturday, Nathan.
Yep. And by everybody, at Nails Nathan on Instagram. There's a underscore between the nails.
So we'll put up your link and your Instagram information on the
episode, the podcast. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be sending. Hey, everybody! I'm on a podcast. Listen to this.
Exactly. You do that. You're helping us out as well. You're helping us out.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the conversation with you, Nathan. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I just blabbed so much. So.
No. Yeah, that's exactly. We brought you on for that reason. You added this fresh take.
I really got into this. I mean, like Oscar told me about it, and then like I started listening. I was like, I would sit there and think about these things during the day that you guys talk about. I was like, yeah, and then and I'd get into it, and I want to like respond. I'd send Oscar text like,
I've seen some of the texts you sent, like the long ass text. I was just like, wow.
Right. I get into it, yeah. So
it's happy to I'm so happy to have you as the first guest. Actually,
thank you.
It's been a brilliant episode.
And Oscar, anything else to say?
Nothing much to add. Just for the listeners, please check out Nathan's art. All the information will be on the description on the YouTube and on the Apple page. And please, come and listen to the next episode. Hopefully, we'll have more guests who are half as interesting as Nathan.
Oh, and by the way, please, anybody out there, don't tell the cops you know me.
Yeah.
Technically, what you do is illegal. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on that part. I had a couple of stories I could have told about almost getting busted, but
when we have a crime month, we're gonna bring you on.
Okay.
Crime / true crime month.
I'll disguise my voice. Hello, everybody. I'm not that other guy.
If we have video, we're gonna put you in the shadow. You know the thing they do in journalists when they are trying to hide the witnesses, try to hide the interviewers, and
or
stuff
Japanese TV. They
Oh yes.
All
Sound like a
right.
3-year-old girl. And
Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Oscar, and thank you, special of all,
Thank
Nathan.
you very much,
so much for
Nathan.
coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's been fun and great.
it's been fun and great.
Yeah.
And with that, we can end the episode. Bye, bye, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, bye.